Hey there, good morning.
Good morning, Tracy. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll give us a few more minutes to join. I'm going to be sitting in for Jonathan this morning. He sent out an email on yesterday with the agenda as well as some other supporting documentation. Due to him not being here today, I'm going to sub for him and chair the committee meeting. So again, I think we only have, and Angela, if you could help me. Not Angela, I'm thinking of somebody else. Right now, I only see Nicole Lamb, Melissa Hernandez, Angela Holmes, Deshia Shanks, and Lloyd present. I don't think we have a quorum at this time, so I'm gonna give a few more minutes before we to allow some folks to join us. Because one of the things that's on our agenda is to adopt minutes from December of 2022, March 2023, and last month, April 2023. Good morning, Jeffrey. Glad you can join us.
The actual client wasn't installed, but still getting the office acclimated here.
Would you say you're a little staticky?
Still getting the office set up here, so I'm trying to get everything in place where I can do meetings.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Still downloading apps and getting things in place.
Okay. All right. It's 10:03, and just to honor everyone's time for being here and on time, because we are going to wrap up by 11:30. We do have a public comment period. Was there any anyone that was joining us that wanted to speak out during the public comment period? Okay. All right. If not, we're going to go ahead and close and move on. Again, I'm going to probably table the approval of the minutes to see whether or not we have others that will join us to have a quorum to be able to do that. So I'm going to go to the next item on the agenda, which is the review of the proposed scorecard for the 2023 Emergency Solutions Grant ESG competition. We do need a vote on that, and Lloyd's going to facilitate this discussion and presentation.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning, everyone. Lloyd Schmeidler, Community Development Department, Senior Analyst. Also, as I move into this portion of this agenda item, I want to offer a word of welcome to Jeffrey Rawlings as a member of the homelessness team. Jeffrey started with employment with the City of Durham this week. He was in new employee orientation with the city's Human Resources Department on Monday and Tuesday of this week, and then took up his getting his office set up yesterday and today in our Community Development Department. Jeffrey, want to invite you to take a moment to introduce yourselves to the members of this committee. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you happen to come to be employed with the City of Durham and our homelessness team.
Sure thing. Thank you so much. I came from the Balanced State, Region 7 specifically, working in doing coordinated entry and working the by name list, and as system administrator, agency administrator for HMIS as well. And I covered Johnston, Lee, Harnett, Anson, Randolph, Richmond, Moore, Montgomery, and Hope counties. We functioned with the ESG grant for rapid rehousing, a grant for supportive services, SSO-CE, through the COC, as well as a recent grant that we gotten for the Safe at Home grant, which is a DV grant that we received as well. So I started with community action initially as a crisis intervention specialist, and kind of had an affinity for people who were experiencing homelessness or going through homelessness, and that was because twice in my life I had experienced homelessness. Didn't realize then that it would kind of prepare me for where I would be in my career at this point. But it was the kind of the turning point in my life when I went through it. The first time was kind of a college thing, and you could kind of blow it off as just being a part of the college experience, believe it or not. But the second time I was an adult, and it was life altering. And after I came out of it, I worked in the private sector for quite a while, but realized that this was where my calling lied. So I came back into this, working with it first through my church, through the SHIP Outreach and Hope Community Church in Raleigh, and transitioned into with community action. So this is where my passion lies, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot, and also hopefully bringing some things to the table as well, and sharing some experiences and some past things that I've done as well. My specialty with my previous job was landlord engagement and landlord recruitment. I've spoken with the National Alliance Against Homelessness on both coasts, speaking about landlord engagement, retention, and recruitment. So hopefully I'll be of benefit to them as well. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm sure you'll all make Jeffrey welcome in his new work with our department and with the continuum of care in Durham. Let's move then into the 2023 scorecard for the state ESG applications. Tracy, would you confirm that you can see my screen, which has the scorecard up?
Yes, I can. Thank
Very
you.
good, thank you. The state of North Carolina's Emergency Solutions Grant Office has indicated to us that the Durham COC will be eligible to apply for $171,875 in this year's competition. That's about $400 less, I believe, than last year's amount that we were eligible to receive. The amount the state has received from the federal government, from HUD, is also, I think they said, $11,000 to $12,000 less. So that impacts what the individual COCs across the states can receive. The state has also indicated that it intends to release the application for these funds on June 6th of this year, and have August 21st, 2023 as the deadline for regional and project applications. So we will be working to complete the application process over the months of June, July, and early August. We have not finalized a specific schedule for applications. We will be looking to this committee to put together a scoring committee that would help us evaluate project applications for these funds probably in July, with a view to getting approval from the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, the COC board, in early August, so that we can meet the state's August 21st deadline. We realize this is a schedule that does not align well with committees and the HSAC taking the entire month of July off. But so we will still be working with the committee on this application process. With that as an introduction, then this scorecard, hopefully people have had a chance to review it. We distributed through Jonathan's office a draft of the scorecard last week, I believe you may have received it, and then the department made a revision based on the priority population that was approved by the Policy and Planning Committee at its meeting this past Monday. We are operating under the assumption and belief that the recommendations of the Policy and the Planning Committee for the use of state ESG funds in this competition will be approved by the HSAC. Obviously, if the HSAC would not approve those, the recommendations that I'll outline, the scorecard would need to be further revised. And we potentially could do that at the June 8th meeting, which is the second Thursday of June. Let me say the two important factors, elements that the Policy and Planning Committee approved at its meeting on Monday are that the funds would be divided equally between emergency services and housing stabilization activities. Committee members are reminded that HUD's requirement is that at least 40% of ESG funds are used for housing stabilization activities, which can be either homeless prevention and or rapid rehousing, and a maximum of 60% can be used for emergency services, which includes funding to support emergency shelters, both their operations and their essential services in emergency shelters, as well as street outreach activities. The Policy and Planning agreed with the recommendation to divide the funds equally, essentially this year, between emergency services and housing stabilization. The department also recommended, and it was approved by the Policy and Planning Committee, that the priority population for these funds be identified as unsheltered households with children or unsheltered families. We are especially concerned as a department, and I think within the COC, the challenges Durham has had since the COVID pandemic hit to provide adequate emergency shelter to all unsheltered families. Colin reported to Policy and Planning on Monday at its meeting that at that time, I believe there were 38 or 39 unsheltered families on our waiting list for emergency shelter and assistance to move back into permanent housing. I believe I saw Nicole Lamb on the call. Nicole, do you have any updates on the number of unsheltered families that might be needing assistance today?
Yes, I do. There is, sorry, I did not have it up. There is 37 families that are unsheltered at this time, and there is 69 singles that are unsheltered at this time, and there is 36 families at risk of being homeless in 14 days, and 28 singles at risk of being homeless in 14 days.
Very good. Thank you for that update. So with that, then we continue to be very concerned about unsheltered individuals and families as a whole. But there's particular concern that we do as much as we can as a COC to address the needs of unsheltered families. So policy and planning is recommending that we target the use of these state ESG funds in 2024, in this year's competition for activity in calendar year 2024, to specifically address the needs of unsheltered families. To do that, the revised scorecard that would be used to evaluate project proposals or applications is suggesting that we, at the very bottom, question 5.71 is a bonus section, and we are recommending that we award 35 bonus points to projects that indicate that they will address the COC priority population for the use of these funds. Would be unsheltered families served by a street outreach project or a rapid rehousing project, with the funds being divided equally, again, assuming that these the policy and planning recommendations are approved by the HSAC. We would anticipate that project applications could receive these 35 bonus points. The 35 bonus points represents 25% of the points available on the total scorecard without the bonus points. So it's a substantial bonus that project applications would receive. Obviously, if a street outreach project, for example, receives 50 points without the bonus points, and they were in competition with an emergency shelter project that without bonus points received 80 points, the street outreach project would receive, if they indicated that their priority population for street outreach was unsheltered families, and that was clear in the application in terms of and the descriptions of the project, that they would then get these 35 bonus points and would have 85 points on the score, and score higher than the emergency shelter project that would only receive 80 points without any additional bonus points. That is the main question. Other than that, I think the scorecard is very similar to what we have had on the state ESG scorecard in previous years. There have been some adjustments with the point values to make sure the scorecard aligns with the performance measures and the benchmarks that the COC board, the HSAC, approved in March of 2022, and we would continue to evaluate projects based on those performance measures and how well they are meeting the benchmarks of the various measures as approved by the HSAC. There's still some, as there had been in the past, some subjective questions on the scorecard. One right now that I'm showing is, and it is a question asked about of all applications in the appropriate section, and that is the project budget reasonable for the number of people that the proposal or application expects to enroll or serve in the under the contract that they would have with the state. With that, by way of introduction, I welcome any questions and additional discussion that committee members might have. But continue to continue to share the scorecard, and we can move to any specific section that members of the committee or others on the call may wish to discuss.
Okay.
Tracy,
Thanks,
back to you.
thanks, Lloyd, for that overview of the scorecard and where we are with the ESG. I just had a follow-up question. You said the COC was receiving, or Durham, the city of Durham was receiving less funds than they were in the past. What is the anticipated amount of funds that will be available to be applied for
Yeah,
or eligible for?
the state has indicated we'll be eligible to apply for $171,875.
Okay, all right. And the focus of the Policy and Planning Committee is to kind of evenly divide the focus between unsheltered families and single households for this upcoming year.
So that the priority population throughout would be unsheltered families, whether they're served by a rapid rehousing project or a street outreach project. So a rapid rehousing project, for example, would focus on helping unsheltered families move directly from unsheltered homelessness into permanent housing via short to medium term rent assistance.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And certainly a street outreach project would have a similarly focus on specifically serving the needs of unsheltered homeless families that are coming through our system.
Okay, so the numbers of the 37 families on the wait list right now, do we know that they are, whether or not they're utilizing hotels or any couch surfing or other things that for them to continue to be considered homeless?
I'll direct that question to Nicole.
Yes, so for the unsheltered means they are sleeping in a car, they're outside, they are not at hotels unless there's a church paying for them. But most of the 37 that are unsheltered, waiting for shelter at both of the family shelters in Durham right now, they are unsheltered, and they do have a street outreach referral that was sent out to Housing for New Hope, and they are being assessed with Housing for New Hope with their street outreach team.
So just to clarify that point, Nicole, the number of 37 does not include the families that are currently in emergency shelter at Families Moving Forward or Urban Ministries, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
Yep, they're on the waiting list to get into the shelter
right.
or to get into permanent housing.
Right.
Yeah, and then we do have 36 families that are at risk, and some of them are couch surfing, some of them are at hotels, and some of them are about to be evicted.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. I see Ricky's hand up.
Thank you, Tracy. Apologies to the group for coming in late. So if any of this information I'm about to ask has already been addressed, I apologize. I just got here at 10:15. So I caught the part of Lloyd's overview that unsheltered families are going to be prioritized for ESG funding. And my question is, so is the by name list process that's currently happening, is that going to be adjusted in order to meet that end? Like if we're saying unsheltered families are the priority, is our by name list process going to shift to make that accommodation? Because otherwise it would seem like cherry picking the clients that you want to work with, and that's not what we want to do with these funds. So that's my question about that.
My understanding would be that for the use of these funds, a street outreach project that is awarded funds through this competition would be focusing on providing street outreach services specifically to unsheltered families, and that other street outreach projects that are using other funds, whether those are other ESG funds or City of Durham dedicated housing funds or private funds, would continue to serve other unsheltered people who are not members of families or households with children. And so I think what we would be effectively doing would be, I think, creating two revenue streams, one for unsheltered households in general, and then with a second stream that would focus specifically on unsheltered households with children. And I think the by name list processes would be adjusted to make sure that both subpopulations of unsheltered people are being served within the limits of the funding available. Does that make sense or address your question?
Well, so since I came in late, like, are you saying this is only for street outreach? Like street outreach is the only project applying for state ESG funds for 2024 that would have this?
Nope.
Okay.
Right, so the priority population would be unsheltered families, and does not preclude an emergency shelter from applying for the half of the funds that would be allocated to emergency services, but as indicated, would give a bonus to a street outreach project that specifically describes how it would effectively serve unsheltered families. We would give, as noted in 5.71, a 35-point bonus to street outreach projects that clearly indicate how they're going to make unsheltered families a priority population for their street outreach project. Similarly, a rapid rehousing project application that wants to receive the bonus would need to describe how it would effectively target rapid rehousing assistance to unsheltered families. But we would envision both housing stabilization activities as well as emergency service activities, focusing, hopefully, again, depending on how the scoring is done in the final decisions, that the priority population for the use of these funds, both for emergency services as well as housing stabilization activities, would be unsheltered families. We certainly realize roughly $85,000 in terms of rapid rehousing, with you're budgeting, $8,000 to $10,000 per household just for a year's worth of rent assistance, for example. It's not going to serve 37 families, but potentially, again, depending on how you want to compute averages, could serve, maybe 8 to 15, depending on how the funds are used. Is that helpful?
I mean, I have a follow-up, but Tracy had her hand up next. So Tracy, go ahead.
Well, that's fine. I'll yield to Sally because I had a follow-up question to your question, Ricky. So I'll yield to Sally, and then I'll loop back around. Thank you.
So this ESG application process is for a 3-year period, correct?
That is not correct. This is state emergency solutions grant funds, and currently the state of North Carolina is conducting annual competitions for state ESG funds. This is separate from the RFP that our department opened on May 1st for the use of city entitlement ESG funds.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there, if there are any, if there are not any other questions specifically about the scorecard itself, I will stop sharing so that I can go back and at least see people's faces for those who have their video open.
Okay, I just had a question too, and it was kind of along the same vein of what Ricky was kind of alluding to. Since we're using the priority list, but we've kind of done away with the VIs for that, how we kind of, we know the focus, the target population for priority or prioritization is going to be unsheltered families. But is there, what other way are we kind of gauging their chronicity? Are those families going through the coordinated intake or entry process to document their homelessness? And are we kind of using that information as well to kind of help them navigate through the system to be able to identify what their service needs may be along with housing?
My understanding of the process is that families contact Entry Point Durham. They're added to the list, and then the street outreach team would work to contact the household, verify that they are in an unsheltered situation, and then families would be prioritized. I would believe there would be the possibility, certainly, for the street outreach team to work with the rapid rehousing project that has also prioritized unsheltered families and make referrals from the street outreach project to the rapid rehousing project to help expedite moves from unsheltered homelessness into permanent housing.
Lloyd, and if you mentioned this already, I do apologize, but who established this priority? Was it established by the executive committee? Was it established by the policy and planning committee? You know, was there, who?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And again, the department, essentially the homelessness team, made recommendations for the use of state ESG funds and the priority population to the policy and planning committee in its role to establish priorities as for the use of the funds as well as priority populations. The policy and planning committee approved those recommendations at its meeting on Monday. The policy and planning committee will be seeking approval from the entire HSAC at its May 24th meeting. And so it's not a done deal in any way, but it is the recommendation of policy and planning, and that's where it stands currently. And we're, as a department, operating. We would like to get approval for the scorecard so that when the state opens the state ESG competition, we will have the scorecard available to present to the Durham COC and organizations that are interested in applying for funds so that they are aware.
One last thing and then I'm done, I swear. So thinking about how our system performs, should this be approved by HSAC that we're going to adopt this prioritization for state ESG funds? Is it the department's vision that, okay, state ESG is going to focus on unsheltered families, but our system has other pots of funding available? There's COC funds, there's city ESG funds, and those projects with those funding streams would just operate like how our by name list prioritizes people for available permanent housing slots. But anybody who is applying for these state ESG funds, if it's approved by HSAC, must have this designation for unsheltered families. Is that how the department is thinking about the system functioning?
I think yes. You know, I could envision it depends on the applications, right? I mean, if we get a street outreach project that scores so poorly without bonus points that it is only scores 85 points with the bonus and is in competition with an emergency shelter project that scores 90 points without the bonus, we may decide as a COC, and it's really up to the performance management committee that makes recommendations for funding as it evaluates project applications, right? To say, we appreciate the focus of the applications, but the street outreach project didn't score well enough to, with the bonus, to score higher than the emergency shelter. So we're going to choose to fund emergency shelter because we just didn't have a strong street outreach proposal, even with the bonus points, right? And I would say then, if the priority population is awarded funding, projects focusing on the priority populations do get state ESG funding, then obviously as we continue to work, there would need to be collaboration between the various funded projects, and that's part of the by name list processes would continue, is to say, I think part of the ongoing by name list processes are to say, okay, who has openings, who has funding available for the particular households that are in need in our community, realizing that tragically we don't have rapid rehousing assistance available necessarily for everybody who could use it, and so we will need to continue to focus on by name list processes that help us meet the needs of people experiencing homelessness as best we can.
Ricky, does that address your question?
I'm gonna have to watch the 15 minutes that I missed in order to put it all together. I just want to make sure that I understand what the department is thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Fundamentally, I would say in response to that, fundamentally, the department is thinking that we have a large number of unsheltered families that we're particularly concerned about because of the children involved. And so we're feeling like we need to devote more resources specifically to try to address their needs for shelter and housing.
All right, Renee, I see your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to go back to the time frame that we were looking at. You had mentioned, Lloyd, August 14th. Could you kind of go over that timeline?
Yes, thank you. Yep. So the state has indicated it is the time frame for this year's state ESG application is they're planning to release the request for applications on June 6th, with a deadline for the submission of the applications to the state from COCs across the state on August 21st, so that we, in order to give local organizations time to go through an appeals process for local funding decisions, we're more than likely looking at the HSAC making funding recommendations at least 2 weeks before August 21st, and to give organizations then time to file an appeal that would be potentially responded to by the HSAC executive committee prior to the August 21st deadline by the state. Is that helpful?
Yes, you had mentioned something about HSAC not meeting in July, and what would that impact be?
Well, we are in the process, I think, of working with the HSAC executive committee to finalize a meeting schedule for the summer. Again, traditionally, since the HSAC was formed in 2011, the practice has been that in the same way that City Council does not meet in the month of July, the HSAC also has not had formal meetings in the month of July for this competition. Obviously, I think the implication would be that decisions about the funding recommendations, I guess the scheduling implications are twofold. One is that some members of the Performance Management Committee would need to be working with the department during the month of July to review project applications for these funds and to make funding recommendations, and that this committee would need to probably plan to meet early in the month of August and to make its funding recommendations to the HSAC, and then the HSAC meeting in early August to approve funding recommendations before the August 21st deadline, and we would need something about 2 weeks at least for to make sure we have an opportunity for organizations to file an appeal of local to the local COC for the funding decision, should there be any. Hopefully there wouldn't be, but we need to allow time on the schedule for the submission of appeals of the funding recommendation.
Okay, so basically, how much time does that give organizations to respond?
So it would need to happen very quickly. I'm looking at my August calendar. August 21st is a Monday. I think we're tentatively going to be asking the HSAC to make funding initial funding recommendations on August 9th. That would then require organizations that wish to file an appeal probably to file an appeal by the close of business on August 14th, and to have the HSAC's executive committee consider appeals between August 14th and August 18th so that we can meet the August 21st deadline. Again, in the past, the HSAC typically has had its meetings in August on the 4th Wednesday of the month, which in 2023 is also August 23rd. Is that helpful?
It is.
Thank you.
Lord, one more question about the prioritization. So this will also be contingent upon the number of applications we receive and the scope of the work that they're projecting to do. Because even though the other committee has recommended that we equally split the funds towards unsheltered and single households, if projects that are submitted and are recommended to HSAC do not necessarily align with that, we will make adjustments based on the number of applications and how they are scored, correct?
Correct. And that's the important work of the evaluation committee and the scoring committee.
Okay, all right, thank you. Are there any other questions or follow-up questions to Lloyd's presentation to the 2024 ESG funds that are going to be available and the process for the scorecard before we move on? Also, we do need a vote on this proposed scorecard before we proceed to the next agenda item. At this time, do we have a quorum? I think we do. Okay. Okay, all right.
Official performance management subcommittee members, we only have 3 on the
Okay.
call right now, so we do not have a quorum.
Okay, all right. So what is being recommended is that we consider doing an email vote for the approval of the scorecard, given the timeline we're working with, and I would agree with that. We do have a fairly tight turnaround time, given the deadline and also the review process and then the recommendations for HSAC. So, and I acknowledge Ricky's statement in terms of being able to abstain as well. So what we could do, and Lloyd, let me know whether or not this is correct procedurally, to be able to send this out to, send the scorecard information out as well as any relevant information to the ESG funds that are going to be available for the city to apply for and allow an electronic vote, a vote via email.
I think yeah, we have done email votes in the past, and I believe it is allowed by the COC governance charter. We can work with Jonathan when he returns to move forward with an email vote.
Okay.
Of eligible voters, those who do not have a conflict of interest.
Okay. All right. So we'll circle back and include Jonathan to have an email possibly be sent out next week so we can go ahead and finalize this to kind of keep it moving forward and not allow it to just stagnate while we're trying to have a quorum. So we're going to move on.
I think one caveat to that, I think recommendation will probably make to the committee and Jonathan is that since don't have a quorum today, that we wait until after the May 24th HSAC meeting to, just in the unlikely event that they choose to not follow the recommendations of policy and planning, if they would make any changes. So I think we can have a vote between May 24th and June 6th and finalize the scorecard during that time frame.
And will that give us enough time to convene groups to review the applications and not, hold up the time frame?
We will. We haven't finalized a specific schedule for when we will expect project proposals to be submitted. We are planning to use the state Smartsheet application portal for those applications again, but we'll certainly give projects at least until early July, a good 4 weeks at least to submit proposals. So
Okay.
we would want to use the June meeting of this committee to finalize who is serving on the evaluation committee with. So we do have some time.
Okay. All right. Ricky, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you, Tracy. So similar to the RFP process that just came out for the CDBG, ESG, DHF funds, would there be like a similar workshop for this application process or no?
The state will be having some pre-application, submission workshops. At this point, at the department level or the COC level, we are not anticipating additional workshops.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions for Lloyd and the discussions come to an end, we are going to conclude that we will send out and coordinate with Jonathan an email to have a vote being done by the committee members, and then he'll set the deadline so we can kind of again keep in mind the time frame and also the fact that HSAC is not meeting in the month of July, but also give applicants enough time to submit their application. And so we can kind of keep this process moving forward. So we'll move on to so a vote is not needed because we'll do one via email. So the next agenda item is to review the proposed changes to the 2023 COC competition scorecard. And Lloyd, you'll make a presentation regarding that.
Thank you. Can you see my screen once more?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, thank you. So after these earlier first semi-annual evaluation of our COC funded permanent housing projects, the scoring committee as well as the department was concerned that except for the Home Again project, which is moving towards closing later this year, and is really not maintaining really adequate documentation, at least for scoring purposes in the HMIS. The three rapid rehousing projects being funded with COC funds, Fresh Start, and the two rapid rehousing projects of Housing for New Hope were at the bottom of the scoring list on our first semi-annual evaluations. In light of that, with Jonathan's support, we have gone back to the 2023 project evaluation tool that was approved by this committee in December of 2022 for use in 2023. And we're proposing 3 revisions to the scorecard that hopefully everything else being equal in terms of the performance of our permanent supportive housing projects and our rapid rehousing projects would enable the rapid rehousing projects to improve their scores to hopefully a level somewhat comparable to the PSH projects. And I want to I have highlighted those 3 areas, and we'll go through them somewhat briefly.
Excuse me, Lloyd.
Yes.
Is it possible for you to increase the view of the page just a little bit for those of us who are a little challenged visually?
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's pretty large on my screen, but is
Okay.
that better for you?
It is. Thank you.
All right, so thank you for that, for highlighting that. Certainly want people to be able to see it. The first question we're proposing a revision on is question 6B, non-cash benefit sources. And we are reducing the goal from a goal of 75% to 60%. I would say that in making these suggested revisions, I looked at the scores of the rapid rehousing projects as a group, looked at where as a group they scored the lowest on the evaluation tool as we had it. And non-cash benefit sources was a question that I think all 3 of them struggled to meet the 75% goal. So reducing that to 60% would hopefully enable all 3 projects to score better than they did in the first evaluation. Secondly, coming down to the next highlighted question. The next question is question 10B. We've had discussions as a committee, certainly over the last couple of years since we've moved towards by name list processes as to how we should evaluate all of the projects in terms of serving people with their highest needs. The question 10 had been zero income at entry, had the same target for both PSH and rapid rehousing projects on the prior scorecard. We're recommending that we break it out into a separate goal, keeping it at 50% for PSH projects, but setting the goal for rapid rehousing projects at 25%. So that would hopefully make it more possible for rapid rehousing projects to again improve their scoring on that particular aspect of serving clients with the highest needs. The third question that we're proposing a revision is under question 17B, which is the cost for a reasonable permanent housing exits. And prior, the previous iteration was simply that if costs are more than 105% of the average, projects would lose 1 point for each percentage point that they are above the 105% average. The proposal here is that the rate of reducing or losing points would be cut in half, so that projects would lose 1/2 point for every additional percentage point increase. That again would be rounded to the nearest integer or whole number, but it would essentially, if a project, for example, its average cost was say 130% of the average, it would lose about 12 points rather than a full 25 points. So those are the only three questions on the scorecard that we are suggesting that we could make some revisions to for rapid rehousing projects. The cost of exits here, we think have had some conversation and dialogue about that with the increased housing costs in the Durham community. People in rapid rehousing projects are both staying longer in rapid rehousing projects, as well as rental assistance needs being somewhat higher. So if the average cost of a unit is prior to 2022, 2023, if the average cost was only $800 a month and the rapid rehousing project provided 3/4 of that assistance, then the cost would be $600 a month. If the average cost is going up to $1,000, for example, in round terms, and we're still providing 3/4 of the assistance for a period of time, and see it is up to $750. And of course, if you have a household that on average is staying in the project only 6 months, the cost for assistance to that household is less than it would be for a household that's in the rapid rehousing project for 12 months or 9 months. So that's the kind of the thinking as to why we could reduce, make changes on question 17B. So those are the three questions that we're suggesting we change in anticipation of the second competition this year, second evaluation, and we are concerned that we do what we can to evaluate projects equitably and give rapid rehousing projects essentially the same opportunities to score well on the evaluation tool as the PSH projects have. Obviously, it'll remain to be seen whether, even with these changes, how the rapid rehousing project would score in comparison to the PSH projects. We are encouraged that DASH, and again, we congratulate Tracy Stone-Dino and the team at Alliance for the DASH project scoring quite well on the first evaluation, and we would trust that they'll continue to score well in the second evaluation, and their ability to score well suggests that the evaluation tool that at least is a fair tool for PSH projects. And we realize too that adding bonus points to the scorecard in various ways does allow all of the projects to improve their scores. to reasonable levels.
I had a quick question, Lloyd, as you mentioned, so the fair market rate rent rate for Durham or the Durham Chapel Hill MSA area was taken in consideration when you were making the adjustments around that particular question on the scorecard?
We didn't refer to fair market rents rates or reasonable rent rates specifically. I just use those numbers as an example of why the costs for serving households with rapid rehousing have increased.
Yeah, because the cost of, it's very hard to find anything under $1,000. There are some, but there are they have limited amenities, and sometimes they're not always in a community that could foster recovery or help families to improve their circumstances or have a good quality of life. So I'm just wondering whether or not that information was taken in consideration as you kind of, tweak the scorecard a little bit.
Well, again, it was, we looked at how well the three projects scored under reasonable permanent housing exit, and all three of them, I think, were challenged to meet to score well on the tool as we had it.
Okay, Ricky, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Tracy. I just want to first commend Alliance's DASH program for, coming in #1 for the spring evaluation. Those who are not in the biz have no idea how challenging it can be to, effectively serve our target population. So kudos to all you guys. Lloyd, you're up next. I got 3 questions for you.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one, can you scroll to page 2 of this document, please? Yes, thank you so much. So as a agency that operates COC funded rapid rehousing, one thing that kind of stuck out to me is question number 1, which is like the length of time of participation for housing. So last year, the Durham COC came up with performance goal standards, right? And I do believe in that performance goals, the length of time from rapid rehousing enrollment to housing move-in date was increased from 30 days, if I'm correct in thinking, to 60.
Yes.
So this tool, and I know it's from HUD, what can you do? But it's going to that 30-day rule. And so I didn't know if this is something that could possibly be edited, because the Durham COC has established performance expectations for rapid rehousing, and the 30-day goal has been increased.
That's certainly something we can look at.
Okay.
I would mention too that currently the standard is under column G that projects get full credit for this if only 50% of the participants move to housing within the 30-day goal. But we can consider adjusting it this time around.
Just
members of
food for thought, just putting it out there.
Yep.
So my next one, can you go to the non-cash benefit goal one? I can't remember what question that was.
Number 6, I believe. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So kind of along the same thinking path is, you said that the committee is considering changing the goal to 60% for non-cash benefits. Is that in alignment with the Durham COC project performance for rapid rehousing?
I believe I looked at that, and I'm not sure we actually have a specific measure for that, but let me double
Okay.
check.
Okay. Like just wanting all of our information to align, right?
Correct.
And I think that would make it hopefully easier for new folks that we have, or new organizations that, you know, get granted this funding to not feel like they have to look at too many different standards to figure out how they're supposed to be operating their projects. So then my last question to you, Lloyd, is on the zero income client one. I think that was number 7, maybe.
Okay, hang on a second. In terms of rapid rehousing measures, the rapid rehousing measures that were approved by the HSAC are 4, and non-cash income is actually not one of them.
Okay.
So
Okay.
as a committee, we can decide next year whether we want to continue that. The measures just for review are housing stability, increases in total income, length of time between entry and housing move-in, which, as you said, is 60 days or less is the current target, and then health insurance participation.
Thank you for that. And then my last question was about those zero income clients.
You guys still seeing the scorecard?
Page 5 of it, yes.
Page 5 is zero income. Oops, going in the wrong direction. Okay.
So for historical context, this particular question, I think, has been a topic of conversation for years as it relates to rapid rehousing projects, because of the fact organizations are assigned people to work with, right? So it's whoever's prioritized by the by name list process. That's the household that's going to be enrolled to one of your projects. Like, organizations have no control over who is referred to them. So this zero income issue, I think, has been challenging for rapid rehousing, because it's like we've seen a lot of households prioritized that really are PSH, like they would benefit from a PSH slot, but because PSH is hard to come by, it's like, well, we have rapid rehousing, so let's try to see if that works. And I think, you know, a lot of communities have, you know, operated the same way. Like, PSH is limited, we have rapid rehousing, let's put this PSH household into rapid rehousing and maybe it'll work. But in operating COC funded rapid rehousing, just from experience, you know, I think the reason why you do see rapid rehousing perform less than PSH is because you're putting PSH households into a different kind of program and expecting rapid rehousing results, right? And that's not quite, not to say that it's impossible, but it's very challenging. And so I don't know, even with the suggested edits that you're proposing, if we would really see a difference. I mean, we can certainly try, but I think, you know, we're putting folks into programs that don't have the supportive services in place. Like, every article about rapid rehousing says it's supposed to be a light touch. PSH households are not light touches. So that's all I have to say about that.
Would you like a response?
You can if you'd like. I was just trying to provide some context.
Yes, so the larger context of having component 2 on our scorecard is, I think, as you mentioned, that HUD does want us to be evaluating how well our projects are serving high need and vulnerable populations. I would point out that on our 2022 competition, project capacity review and ranking, our local competition, HUD's evaluation of how well we're conducting the local competition scored at 28.5 of a total possible score of 30, which HUD is ranking us at 95% for how well we're conducting the local competition. And that does include, again, evaluating how well our projects are serving high need and vulnerable populations. If members of the committee, if the committee wants to remove question 10 entirely, or do away completely with component 2 because people going into rapid rehousing as well as PSH projects are basically are based on referrals from the by name list process. We can do that, but the risk is that we will lose points in HUD's evaluation of our collaborative application. We are already challenged, as you may know, with scoring in the collaborative application. So I think our recommendation from the department is that we continue to evaluate all projects that are getting COC funds for how well they're serving high need and vulnerable populations. And that would include our rapid rehousing projects, realizing that the standards for their services to high need populations could and should be different from the standards for PSH. That's my response.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to suggest that we get rid of it. I just wanted to provide more context around why COC funded rapid rehousing projects historically have not performed as well as PSH, and also wanted to give context to the fact that households are being served longer in rapid rehousing than they once were.
Yes.
Like it's all tied together. And like you
Correct.
said, if a rapid rehousing project is scoring 28 out of 30 points for serving high needs populations, that says a lot. And, we should keep it if it's going to help our collaborative application score, just giving context.
I think I would suggest we continue to do this, and I think it's incumbent on our rapid rehousing project to provide the supportive services that households need to move from situations where they enter the project at zero without income, and work closely with those participants to figure out, okay, over a course of 6 or 9 or 12 months, what is the household going to do to increase income so that it can reasonably be expected to, pick up the rent and exit from the rapid rehousing project without additional assistance, right? So that's certainly a challenge.
Okay, if there aren't any other further questions, I still think we don't have a quorum. It was noted we need to vote on this this agenda item. However, without a quorum, we may have to, is there a deadline that we need to do this with in terms of the time frame for the COC?
It's a great
petition
question.
process?
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. We do not have a specific guidance from HUD as to when they are going to be releasing the 2023 Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO. We have great confidence that whenever they release it, which is going to be sometime soon, September 30th, 2023 is going to be the absolute deadline. They want it submitted to them before the end of the federal fiscal year, which is September 30th. So we could anticipate that it's going to be released probably sometime in June, maybe early July, but whatever it is, we should anticipate that it's going to be due to HUD by the end of September. We have some time, I would say, to again consider these changes and hopefully approve them when hopefully the committee has a quorum at its June meeting.
Okay, so we can table this and
Yes.
have this moved over to be added to the June meeting's agenda to move back towards the vote. We probably don't need the whole presentation again, but to remind people that we do need to vote on this.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Duly noted. All right, the next agenda item, I just want to be cognizant of the time. At this time, it is 11:17. And our last agenda item is the update on the semi-annual reporting of data from the HSAC approved performance measures. And Melissa is going to present this information.
I'm so sorry. I was in the middle of another conversation in the office. What was the question?
The next agenda item is an update on the semi-annual reporting of data from HSAC,
Oh, yes.
approved by the Performance Measures Committee.
Yes, perfect. So we just sent out an email. So as you know, performance management did vote to accept the COC project performance standards that we asked all of our providers for all of our different projects to submit their performance data. So we just requested data for the period ending March 2023. And they've been asked to submit that data. They have, I think, another week or so to continue submitting data. Once that process is complete and we've received the data from our providers, we'll go ahead and clean up the scoring, make sure that things are matching what the APRs are showing in HMIS. And then we'll work with providers to clean up any data that isn't matching up to what we see in HMIS. And then from there, we will bring the scores that we obtain from now until the end of May to the Performance Management Committee, and we'll review it together. And then we're hoping that this will be the first batch of project performance scoring that we'll actually post to the public, because one of the goals is, of course, to be able to make this publicly available, because we should be sharing our project performance data publicly. So the hope is to be able to share that on our website once we've completed scoring this time around.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Just to reiterate, the deadline for the data to be submitted is April 24th. Are you on mute, Melissa?
One moment, I'm so sorry. Let's see. So May the 24th. So that'll be the end of business on May the 24th that projects will have to submit their data.
Oh, it's May 24th, not April 24th.
Correct, yes. So it'll be
Okay.
the end of this month that they would have
Okay,
to
I'm
finish
sorry.
submitting their
Why did I say April 24th? I was thinking May and said April. Okay, May 24th.
No worries. The months
Okay.
seem to mesh together now.
I know, so sometimes it's a blur. Okay, all right. Thank you for that overview. Are there any questions from the committee about this process? Okay, all right. And we received the email just acknowledging that. So I think all the different housing providers and community stakeholders are working on getting that data to you, Melissa, and hopefully you receive it in a timely matter across the community. So that was our last item on the agenda for our meeting. Are there any questions or updates or anything that information you'd like to share with this committee before we adjourn? If not, I'd like to get a motion for someone to.
Wait, I have a question.
Ricky.
You went right into if there are any questions. Okay, if not, I'm gonna adjourn. So when will the recording of this meeting be available and where can I find it?
Thanks, Ricky. It'll be available on the Durham CSC YouTube channel. I do recommend that everyone subscribe to it, because if you subscribe to the Durham CSC's YouTube channel, you'll automatically get a notification when it's been posted. So it's definitely a great way if you're on the committee or if you're any of our stakeholders, which of course, if you are, then you would get immediate updates once the recordings are made available.
Can you put a link to that in the chat if you have that information available? Thank you, Melissa.
Would you also have the slides available, or would they be available there as well?
So we post the shared screen view. So whenever we post the recordings, you should be able to see whatever was shared during the meeting as well. So it'll be like the full meeting recording, which would include the slides that Lloyd shared today.
Yeah, what I was asking specifically for was the document itself.
I can request that from Lloyd. We typically do send emails to the full COC whenever we have a presentation, so it would be something that would be shared to a full COC. However, we have talked about changing up how we send emails to the full COC. So rather than sending each presentation separately, it seems to be a lot of emails that the COC is receiving that way. We're just sending like a monthly update email. So it would be towards the end of May that we would just send all of the presentations in one COC wrap-up email.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions, Ricky? You have any other questions?
The subtext of that. No, ma'am. I don't
No,
have
it
any
is-
more questions today.
No, I just didn't want, I want to give everyone an opportunity to ask another question before we adjourn.
Tracy,
if-
I have one more.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Since we will have an email vote on the agenda items that were discussed today, will you include the information that we will be voting on? I just want to make sure that I have enough. I won't remember everything that was presented today.
Yes, and I think it was sent out prior to this meeting as well. So if you could probably cross-reference your email for today's meeting, I think that information was included, if not an email Jonathan or Lloyd sent out prior to this meeting, but I'm sure it may be attached once we send out the vote via email to be conducted. So we'll include it. All right. If there aren't any other questions, comments, or concerns, I'd like to have someone make a motion for us to adjourn at this time.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies. All right. Thank you so much, committee. Have a good afternoon, and we'll continue to keep Jonathan in our thoughts and prayers as hopefully he'll convene the next meeting next month. Have a good weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.